Hey y'all, it's Nancy the Handy Scandy. Welcome back for another crafty venture. Today I am revisiting the vintage watercolor technique. It's a beautiful technique. I just need more practice. And so through my practice, I've come up with 10 tips to salvage a project should it go awry on you like this one does for me today. I'm sure that there are more than 10 tips that we could come up with, but 10 is what I have for you today. So let's go ahead and just jump on into my process, see where it goes wrong, and see how I fix it. The first thing I will say is that you want to embrace the unpredictability. So if you are someone who needs control or if you seek perfection, this may not be the technique for you. I like unpredictable art and I really love this. I can't wait until I take my own tips and master this technique. But mastery takes time, right? It takes practice, it takes perseverance and persistence. So all right, so that is tip number one, embrace the unpredictability. Step number two is to keep your stamp in your positioning platform, your stamping platform. Whatever platform you use, leave the stamp in there. Now, the pen that I'm using to kind of outline my project and that I'm showing you how it bleeds out here today, it's called the Elegant Writer. It's by Speedball and it's in the color black, but it bleeds out into these beautiful, beautiful colors. And you need to know that sometimes they can overwhelm a space. So my third tip would be to choose a stamp that has lots of open space and very little detail so that this pen does not overwhelm your image like mine does. Now you may have noticed in the beginning that I stamped my image with oxide ink. That's a very important piece of this technique. You have to use some type of water reactive ink because this technique takes advantage of the reactability of the oxide inks, but it also takes advantage of the unique properties of the Elegant Writer pen. As I showed you before, even though that this is in the color black, it bleeds out in all those other colors. It's so very pretty. So when you stamp with the oxide ink and then you use the Elegant Writer, you get this beautiful blend. So embrace the unpredictability, keep your stamp in your platform, choose a stamp with little detail and lots of open space, and you only need a little bit of the Elegant Writer. So I don't know if you noticed, but I put Elegant Writer down in lots of places. Because this is a very detailed stamp, which I should not have chosen, but I did, so I just rolled with it. And I really could have just put like little dash lines or little tick marks instead of solid lines. Now this space right here turns out the best of the entire project. But showing myself grace and learning and growing and sharing my tips with you, yeah, because I learn as I go. So, all right. So another thing that I would say is don't force the inks or the colors to blend. You want to just use a lot of clean water and take your very small paintbrush. I think I have a number 2 round. It might be a 0. No, it's a number 2 round. And just go along the edges with nice clear water. You'll see me reaching up into my water bowl over and over and then tapping off on my towel to the right. So really just letting that water do what it's going to do and get those inks to react and to move and to blend however they choose. You don't want to force it. And you want to allow the inks that open space so that they can do what they're going to do. And I showed you how the inks were kind of bleeding out. It's going to do that more and more until it completely dries. It's going to continue to bleed. And bleed in this case is a good thing. Now, this particular leaf or petal, as well as that open space right here that I'm going in, they also work pretty well. Now you can see that larger space there to the right. You see how there's pinks and purples in there? Those weren't there a minute ago. It was very much just the blues and the greens and the browns. So next tip, I would say, if you want to enhance it, if you want to change the colors a little bit, bring in some watercolor, something that's water reactive. In this case, I'm using my Daniel Smith, I'm sorry. These are very intense pigments. So you can use these, you can use ink tints, you can use any kind of watercolor pencil or crayon and just add a little bit of pigment to your to your project wherever you might want to intensify or add some color. Then, after you get everything looking the way you want it, you'll notice that you will obliterate your details, as I have done. If they're not completely obliterated, they're definitely going to be smudged. So, this is why we keep our stamp in the stamping platform, because you're going to go back and you're going to re-ink. Now, depending on the project that you've used, or the stamp that you've used, you might just need to stamp in black ink, or maybe some more of the oxide that you stamped with in the beginning. In my case, I decided that I was going to use my next tip, which is to heat emboss. So I used my Versamark ink, and then I used some rose gold embossing powder from Wow, and just heated that up. I made sure that my whole panel was dry before I added the embossing powder. I used my heat gun just to dry it completely, and I didn't want that embossing powder sticking where I didn't want it, because I already have a mess. And the mess really is just because all of the colors just blended too much. I didn't have the open space that I needed to make this work right. But again, we're learning and we're growing and we're salvaging, right? We're salvaging this process. So then I went in with a water-soluble pigment to intensify some colors. And then I restamped the image, and of course then I did the heat embossing to try to get some of those details back. And the gold was effective in some cases, but I think that either a black or a brown would have been more effective in some other places. So after that, I'm grunging up my edges with a little bit of the heat embossing. This is where I call it that elegant grunge, or grungy elegance. And it's something I like to do. Of course, you don't have to do it, but I just think it's really pretty, and it adds kind of another element of that mixed media look to it. And then of course I used my deckle edge scissors to create some interest. And my next tip would be to cover those trouble areas that remain. As you can see, I still have some that remain. You want to cover those areas with strategically placed die cut sentiments or embellishments or ribbons or anything of that nature. So here, as I construct my card, you can see I have that brown card base. This is a 5x7 card. I'm putting a white panel on the inside, and I have all of my layers. They're all pre-cut, and I'm just using some tape runner to adhere my stamped and painted and embossed panel down to a white panel. And I trim off that excess on the top and on the left, and then I will layer that up on the black panel. And then I will put that ribbon, I'll put it across the very bottom of the green panel, because I just want to add some detail, and yeah, I just like it. So I taped it to the back, and then I used the tape runner to tape the green panel down to the brown card base. And I used a little bit of glue to adhere my ribbon down, and I held it in place with my tweezers. My tweezers are one of my most used tools in my craft room. And so after a little bit of fussing and fidgeting, I got my panel in place. Everything is all lined up, and now here you can see that I'm using my sentiments to cover up what is still kind of a trouble place. So you can see the areas that worked really well and the areas that didn't work so well for this particular technique. I think the rest of the card looks great. The colors are beautiful. The embossing really enhances that and add the detail back in. But again, I'm still learning. So I salvaged this panel because it was going to go in the trash. But that takes me to tip number 10, which is to be kind to you. Show yourself grace, allow yourself to grow, and be kind. Maybe that should have been number 1, be kind. So 10 tips to salvage a project that might get away from you or go awry in some way. Maybe it's vintage watercolor, maybe it's something else altogether. But I think these are 10 good tips that we can probably apply to just about any project. If you have more tips that you feel like we could have added to this process, let me know. Drop them downstairs. But I would encourage you just to be kind. Just allow yourself that space to fly or to fall, whichever might happen. Create a safe space for you like you would for someone that you love, and then just get back at it. Like I'm going to get back at it again. I will share that process as well, and hopefully I'll put some of these tips into action, and we'll see if I get a different result. So guys, this has been Nancy, the Handy Scandy. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today. Like, subscribe, comment, all those good things, and I just thank you for being here. And until next time, mwah, I'm out.